Hi, my name is Marjukka Niinioja and I'm founding partner at Osango, specializing in APIs, ecosystems, platforms and business models. I want to tell you first about a personal story that led me to design the method APIOps Cycles. And I think that that's going to be something interesting for you to understand why the APIOps Cycles method is so collaborative and is fast and based on lean methods, business-oriented and openly licensed. So some years back, well, actually 20 years back, I was fresh from starting university. I was pulled to work with a lot of public sector systems, with web services, which, by the way, were totally new at the time. And we didn't know what we were doing. I hoped somebody would have told me what we should be doing. We had some cool methods for software development and for architecture in the public sector. And that actually helped us because at that time, nobody had heard about Agile. We were kind of even doing it in some parts, but actually it was really waterfallish, and there was a lot of documentation that needed to be written. And in that sense, when we were newbies and we were trying out things, it was not so bad for us. We had to really think of all the design choices and the processes. Well, fast forward 10 years, I found myself, well, teaching other people, but also doing some product management and API design in a startup where at the time when REST APIs were just a new thing. There were like a couple of companies that were doing them, Flickr and Salesforce, and that was it. Nobody knew how to do REST APIs. Well then, fast forward 5 years more, and people were doing APIs, at least in startups, at least in the very digital savvy companies. But actually, not everybody was doing APIs for the purpose of anything more than integration. Now, integration is a cool thing, don't get me wrong, but at that time there was a lot of distributed architecture coming up and digital platforms and cloud. And the problem was that those things required APIs. Machine learning, IoT required APIs, but they required different sort of APIs than what people were used to when designing integrations in integration platforms. Actually, at that time, a lot of people didn't realize that there were different integration teams in the same organization. There were the junior cloud developers who didn't even know they were integrating necessarily. And then there were the integration platform operators and engineers who were doing integrations there with the kind of proper tools, but they didn't know anything about the other guys. And analytics, data science people were just kind of starting to grow in masses, and they were doing a lot of integrations. They even should have used some more APIs than they did, but a lot of things were happening, and the problem was there wasn't any guidance, there wasn't any process, any methods that were really covering APIs. There were a lot of things for user interfaces and a lot of things for, like, DevOps was just being really kind of coming to age, but they are not really methods. Agile is a kind of a method, or, well, there are methods under Agile, but a lot of things were not dictating in any way, in a good way, how to build APIs. At that time, I had been, in kind of 5 years ago, I had been coming from a startup and coming to a big retail company, and we had to build, in 3 months, we had to build a massive amount of APIs and all the web shops and all the integrations and everything else that kind of went with it. And there were a lot of interesting devices that needed to use APIs, but it was kind of a wild west. Nobody really knew how to build APIs in the same way, and we were needing to roll out API management in a big scale, and it just didn't fly because they wouldn't go into it. They were not designed for it. They were not necessarily designed with the best practices that some people in some API conferences were telling a lot about. But they might have still been really good APIs, but they were all different. Now, we succeeded. We did a lot of cool things. We did a lot of things in the extremely right way of behavior-driven design, test first, API design first, API spec first, a lot of other things. We managed to do it. We even had postman clients with retail kind of cashiers that were testing the stuff before there was even a user interface to just verify that how do you actually get APIs, the data and the functionality out of the APIs. Now, that is a massively good thing, but of course, after that, people were starting to ask me, how did we do it? That is an extremely good question, one which I didn't have really a good answer to. And well, that was the reason why APIOps Cycles was born as a method. So the method consists of some steps, some phases that are cyclic. So there are actually 8 phases in it. And it is completely vendor neutral. I mean, everybody can use it, but it doesn't really take any sides into what API management, what programming language, what other things you're using it with. But it does start from business needs. So it does try to get you to find a value proposition, so a very product managerial point of view. And it does try to get you to kind of find the optimal API to meet the API consumers' needs for that API. And then it goes through a lot of the API lifecycle phases and leads you to the right, hopefully, right direction. But since there are a lot of different methods in a company, and you're probably using all of them or not even aware of all of them if you're in a very large company, then the question is, how does this fit into whatever else the APIs and other people in the software and product and business development are doing in that company? What are the right ways to kind of inject APIOps cycles into the ways of working, and what are the kind of caveats, what are the problems that you face when trying to kind of get this method in? Why should you get it in? Why should you use it? What's the benefit of it? And how do you use it in the right way? Those are all very good questions that I'm hoping we can answer together.